What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Blitz Fantasy Football. My name is Ryan Linkletter, and I am here with Pete Nova tonight. Pete, how we doing? Welcome to the live stream. Glad to have you on tonight.
Doing good, doing good. It's a long time coming. We talked about doing this a little bit for some time now, so happy to be on. And yeah, Saturday night show. I'm not used to doing the start sits on Saturday night, so a little bit more energy than normally on a Sunday
Yes,
morning. So
I'm telling you, I've done both this year, and let me tell you right now, Saturday nights might be the time to go. Everybody has a little bit more energy. They're not dragging, waking up in the morning a little early. We miss the West Coast people. We can cater to everybody Saturday night. So hopefully, right, we get some more questions. We can help you guys out because this week seems to be a pivotal week in a lot of playoff races in fantasy football right now, right? And there looks like there might be a little bit of weather in Chicago, and I know a ton of people have Kyle Monungai or DeAndre Swift questions. So whatever you guys have, fire those questions. We are here for 1 hour answering every single one of your guys' questions. So drop them in the comments and let's get into those questions that were already in the chat from Sean. Best streaming tight end for the week 10 PPR and two solid flex options of our choice. Right. Interesting one here. He has Pierce, Slayton, Tracy, Jawan Jennings, and his tight end choices are Theo Johnson, Dalton Schultz, Cade Otton, and Harold Fannin, who is questionable. So out of that grouping, Pete, are there any names that just jump out to you?
yeah, I mean Theo Johnson from the tight ends. Theo's been really good. That offense is lacking some weapons. I know that there's a little bit of concern with the weather, and appears we're going to get a lot of snow, and it's going to be pretty nasty over there in Chicago. But I like him in this spot here. He's been consistently one of Dart's favorite targets, and Chicago they have been susceptible against the pass. Their secondary is pretty beaten up, so I like Theo Johnson there. And I don't. Is it two flex plays? Am I correct
Two
in
flex
assuming?
plays is what he's looking at. Yeah.
Um, yeah, I don't want to play too many people in this game though. I mean, Tracy Singletary is kind of nipping in. I think I'd go with Pierce, and I would probably go with Fannin or Otten. I think I lean Otten. So yeah, for me it'd be Otten, Theo, and Pierce. I mean, maybe you could throw in Tracy if you didn't want to go Theo, but that would be the way I would roll.
Yeah, I'm in a similar, path with you on this one. I think Theo Johnson is for sure the tight end you look at of that grouping. The guy has 5 touchdowns, right? He's been balling out, and he has a 21% target share with Jackson Dart as his quarterback. And I think despite the predicted weather over here in Chicago, I think it'll be a game where Jackson Dart in this Giants passing game actually has a lot of success against the way the Chicago defense is constructed. The Bears defense has really struggled over the middle of the field into slot receivers this season. I think Wandell Robinson, a really good play. I think Theo Johnson's a really good play in this matchup. They're not going to be the ones affected by the weather. It's going to be a guy like Darius Slayton on the outside and those outside receivers who see a little bit of a bump. Honestly, like based on the two flexes, I don't hate going three tight ends, to be honest. Like, I think Fannin has a great matchup against New York, right? Cade Otton obviously faces New England, and they have ranked among bottom 10 in terms of tight ends this year. So I wouldn't hate running three tight ends, but I understand the risks that come with that because they are tight ends. I
Sure.
do agree with you that Alec Pierce is probably the most enticing one out of that group for me this week. I think Tyrone Tracy is one of my must sit running backs. With Pierce, right, he's due for some positive progression. 0 touchdowns this year, despite having a really strong start to the season. It was interesting. I did my waiver report this week. The guy had 500 receiving yards and was only owned in less than, I think it was owned in 30% of leagues or less. Like, that's crazy. A guy that has that many receiving yards just not owned like that. He should be getting a touchdown soon. So hopefully, heads overseas and maybe the touchdowns start flooding in
Yeah,
for him there.
he's kind of like a little bit of Christian Watson esque, where he gives you like 4 for 75, and you just hope he gets into the end zone kind of guy.
Yeah, 100%. A true steady wide receiver four. All right, Jared's question here. Need two PPR. We got Kamani Vidal, David Montgomery, or Trevion Henderson. Then his second question is, would you trade DK Metcalf for Dobbs rest of the season?
Yeah, I mean, DK for sure I'd prefer over Dobbs. I mean, they're getting reinforcements back there. Steelers didn't add to that room. Jacoby Myers was rumored to maybe get in the pass game. So I'm hanging on to DK there. For the running backs here, it's tough. I have them all kind of grouped kind of similarly. I think I go Monty and Vidal. I know Trevion Henderson, no Ramondre Stevenson, but I still worry about Tampa Bay. That run defense is really good. The defense in general is just playing really, really, really solid. David Montgomery against Washington, I think they're going to be up big in that game. I think it's going to be a lot of points, and Vidal is going to get the workhorse role. So I'll roll with those two over Henderson. It sucks. I get it. We sit here and say, if we don't play Henderson now, when Stevenson's out, when are you going to play him? Considering how he is, I can't make decisions just because hey, Stevenson's out and this guy hasn't been good. I don't want to force him into my lineup. I understand the case for going Henderson, but I think it's a tough matchup. I don't think he's going to have that great of a game, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I'm gonna play devil's advocate here. I'm gonna go Henderson, and it's in a large part due that last week wasn't great, right? We all were like, "Oh man, Travion Henderson, this is the opportunity, right? He's gonna finally get that volume to have a nice day." He didn't have any breakout runs. He didn't have a good reception. He didn't score a touchdown, right? But he played 79% of snaps, so I'm encouraged by that. I think the volume is there for him to have a better day, and he showed flashes of the talent that he had in college. I'm gonna stick with the Travion Henderson train this week. I know Tampa Bay has been very tough on some run games this year, but I think with Travion Henderson, a guy that talented, getting 75% of the snaps this week, I have to roll with that. And Kamani Vidal last week, it was a great matchup for him, and he was one of my must-start running backs. Man, was it disappointing last week for him. Really did not cash in. The team actually, decided to hand some snaps off away from him towards the end of the week. I think he's a solid play for a lot of lineups, but with these guys clumped together, I think I'm going Trevion Henderson and David Montgomery. And then as far as DK and Romeo Dobbs, are we really sure that DK Metcalf is going to be stuck under 6 targets per game with Calvin Austin as the team's wide receiver too? I'm not going to buy that for the rest of the year. I understand I have him as a sit this week, but I think long-term rest of the season, I still take DK Metcalf over Romeo Dobbs. Let's get to the next question here. At the flex, should this guy start JMO or Kenneth Walker?
Oh my god. I mean, these are two guys that have been extremely frustrating all year long.
Yeah.
Kenneth Walker, I mean, I don't have him very high in my rankings. I have him at 26, and I'm at the point where I'm considering even dropping him, possibly even a little bit lower. Jameson Williams, you're really hoping for a big pop. I would go with Jameson Williams just because I look at this game for the Lions. There's been a lot of coach speak of, got to get JMO involved. It's been, it's been frustrating, and I hate putting him in my lineup because I almost keep saying he's droppable at this point. But Washington secondary is so bad, and I think Dan Campbell. This is the kind of game that you say we're stepping on the throat. Dan Campbell has no issue running up the score, and this could be a game where they say we're going to get JMO right against a brutal secondary, and I have no concern that they're going to get conservative if they're up big in this game. So I would go with Jameson Williams. I think the ceiling's higher. If you want safe, go Kenneth Walker, but I think you're sitting there and looking at 8 points unless he gets into the end zone, and you're probably disappointed.
Yeah, I'm going JMO too, and I think Detroit definitely has a sour taste in their mouth after last week against Minnesota and after last year against losing to the Commanders in the playoffs. And the Commanders are significantly beat up on the offensive side of the ball. Their defense has been really bad, bottom 5 in EPA over the last 4 weeks. So with Jameson Williams, right, his target share after the bye week did increase last week. He got some targets. He scored a touchdown, right? It was a little bit better for JMO. I think for the first time this year, he's going to have 2 straight good weeks in a favorable matchup. So give me Jameson Williams over Kenneth Walker. And he does mention Loveland, but Komet back and healthy. I don't think you consider him with either of those options just this week. All right, next guy here, Jeffrey. I have Pop Douglas, Rashid Shaheed in my flex spot right now for the upside. I have Parker Washington and Khalil Shakir on my bench. Would you switch out either for his flex? And then he wants to know if there's any other waiver wire options to potentially slot in there for him. You there, Pete?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay, sorry.
Okay,
Uh,
you're good.
Yeah, no, my bad. Yeah, I think I'm tempted to say I would go with both guys over Shakir and Parker Washington. I'm sorry, I would go Parker Washington and Shakir over both guys. Shahid first game in a new offense. I'm not saying he can't perform well, but Cooper Cup maybe coming back. Torrey Horton, I don't know if he's playing, but ultimately, Shakir has been rock solid. I think you have to have Shakir in the lineup, and it's really between Parker, Washington, Pop Douglas, and Shahid for me. I
Yeah.
think I would go with Parker Washington, honestly, with weapons down. I know it's a tough matchup against that defense, but I don't know. Pop Douglas, I know Keishon Butte is out, but I just don't feel like they match up really well. I'm very concerned about the Patriots this week. I think this is a game that they come out a little flattened. So I'm rolling with both of those two options.
Yeah, I think you actually got these flipped too as well. I think Parker Washington's going to have the volume this week. If there's been one positive of Trevor Lawrence's targets, it's been to the slot position this year and
Yeah.
underneath, under that 10-yard air range. And, Parker Washington's benefiting from that now that Travis Hunter's out. So I like him this week despite the tough matchup. And he also avoids Derek Stingley and Kamari Lassiter on the outside by him playing in the slot. So that makes his matchup slightly easier in this one. And then Khalil Shakir, a guy that I have as a must start, scored 14.5 PPR points against the Dolphins last time. They're also bottom 5 in the NFL in yards allowed to slot receivers, right? Khalil Shakir, he's been really good. I think he's at 11 points now in 6 of his last 8 games. Like the floor with Shakir has rose once again. He's starting to get more of that upside as well. So I think Shakir, considering all those options, right, he's the guy that you have to play. All
Yeah.
right, Pops is in the chat tonight. Shout out to Mark Linkletter. Who do I roll with long term at quarterback? Bo Nix, Jordan Love, or Joe Flacco? A group of guys that
Uh,
are very inconsistent this year.
yeah. Yeah. Uh, I mean, look, I'm the Denver fan, so I get it. Knicks looked really, really bad. The ceiling is too high to go with Flacco. Flacco, I know uh, he's probably got a higher floor in some ways because of the weapons, but I think Jordan Love is probably the safest play with like pretty decent ceiling. So I think Love is if you don't want to take the risk, I think it's Love because he provides a higher ceiling than Flacco. But I still would go with Knicks. I know maybe that sounds like a homer take, but I don't know. He was red hot for 3 games before this last game. It was a bad game. I actually read something. Denver's played 7 games in 38 days. That's kind of brutal. So I'm not. I'm maybe Bo Nix not a great regular quarterback, but I think they get a mini bye this week. They play the Chiefs, then they get another bye. Maybe a little bit of self scouting goes on, and maybe the offense opens up a little bit. So I would go with Knicks. I don't know. Joe Flacco is going to probably be on waivers. Like, you could always go and pivot to Flacco. Love, not necessarily, but that's kind of how I read it. If you want to play it safe with the decent ceiling, you go Love. If you want to just play it the most safe, you go with Flacco. But ultimately, I'm going for upside. So I would go with Knicks because guys like Flacco are going to be out there, in my opinion.
Yeah, 100%. I Bo Nix is such a weird quarterback this year, especially like
Yeah,
it's everything though we like he shows flashes of everything we thought in the offseason he could be in terms of a fantasy quarterback, the rushing upside, right? Being in Sean Payton's offense, the offensive line is among the best in the NFL. When it's clicking in Denver for Knicks, it looks nice. Everything works well. It's just been so inconsistent and volatile that fantasy managers are starting to get cold feet. So with
sure.
Bo, I still have him higher than these two guys, and I do think the added urgency of Denver having these must-win games upcoming against Kansas City, especially next week, right? You get Kansas City again, you get the Chargers again. They have some games they're going to need to win the AFC West this year, and I think Bo Nix is going to have to throw the ball a significant amount to be that. And the interesting part is, despite his struggles, this team still ranks top 10 in passing attempts in the NFL. They're throwing the ball a ton. The volume's there for Bo. So basically, he just can't play as bad as he's been, and he'll be better. And he's been sitting around QB 13, QB 14. So I think with Bo, he's playing at his floor in terms of a season long outlook. I know he's had some spike weeks, but I think out of those guys, I think you trust him the most long term. Loveland and possible bad weather or Hunter Henry this week. This one is tough. This one is very close for me.
Yeah, I look at Loveland and I worry that we're chasing the big game, right, that he
Yeah.
had last week. And I against the Giants, I think that's a solid matchup. I have Loveland at 10. I have Hunter Henry at 12. So I would go with Loveland here. Hunter Henry playing against Tampa Bay. Again, I keep talking about the Patriots. I just don't think there's going to be a really strong output on offense from them. I could be completely wrong here, but I would go with Loveland. I think safety blanket. He even, last week he played more snaps than Komet. I know Komet's coming off the injury, but he was trending up on his snap count as well, even before the injury to Komet. So I think Loveland's the guy. I think he opens up this offense. I think you saw it last week. Like he's a game changer for just completely, like, I think he takes a lot of pressure off of the offense, and I think he's going to continue to be consistent. I don't want to chase the volume, but I think he's the play here over Hunter Henry.
Yeah, I think the interesting part about this one too is like Colston Loveland, we saw the ceiling last week, and a lot of people are just like, oh, maybe Colston Loveland's a bust. He just hasn't been able to get on the field consistently. And what it took was, Cole Kmet missing time the week before, and then Cole Kmet being knocked out of the game last week in a favorable matchup. This week is a really favorable matchup as well. And Ben Johnson is the coach where he's going to play his guys, right? He's going to play his studs and he's going to make sure they get the ball. There's been nothing consistent about this passing game so far this year, right, for Chicago.
Yeah.
And Colston Loveland showed that sign, and Caleb Williams showed some nice chemistry. So, listen, I might be, chasing a ceiling here with Colston Loveland, but I'm going to ride with it. I'm going to ride with him and Monungai this week, two their young guys that have shown a spark, right? And I don't know, man. I think he's in for a nice one. And with Hunter Henry, it just hasn't been the same since the start of the year. His target shares dipped under 14% now over the past few weeks. And this New England offense just continuously seems to find a new guy each week to throw the ball to. And with Tampa Bay being pretty, middle of the pack against tight ends, I don't know. So I think with Henry, his floor, might be kind of similar to Loveland's, but the ceiling with Loveland is just enticing this week for sure.
Sure.
All right, DG here. This is a Blitz Goat. Thoughts on Vidal at flex if Tet McMillan is out tomorrow? We kind of talked about it and alluded to it a little bit. I think it's safe to say he's a low end RB2.
Yeah. Yeah. Low end RB2. I think I just saw the report that said Tet's going to play.
Yeah.
So I think he's good to go. He's playing against the Saints here. A little bit of a trap game for Panthers, in my opinion. Coming off an emotional win where they beat the Packers, right? And they come in, they are going back home. Saints, have kind of been a little bit of the butt of the joke a little bit this season. Their defense is not that bad though. I mean, I would still roll with Ted here if you want the safe play. I guess Vidal because you're getting workhorse volume, but I would go with Ted still in this spot. I mean, he's playing against the Saints. He's been very consistent this year, giving us a really good floor. It's just really about can he get into the end zone. He's good for at least 10 points a game right now. So I would roll with Ted over Vidal in this spot.
Yeah, I think I'm rolling Tet too if he's healthy. 100%. I think with Kamani Vidal, you understand the risk, right? Despite a favorable matchup against the Pittsburgh run defense that outside of last week, they shut down Jonathan Taylor, but they've struggled at times this year.
Yeah.
So I think you kind of trust him as well too. Let's get to our next one here. And real quick, shout out to our Deontay Thornton Blitz Goat here. Forgot to tag the Discord. My bad, guys. You know I'm bad with that. And then some of you guys that are commenting on me and Pete's Twitters, right? The comments aren't coming through completely. So go ahead and go on the Blitz Sports Media Twitter or the YouTube, and those will start coming through so we can get those on here as well. All right. Jeffrey, we got to him. All right. Zay Flowers or Devonta Smith, Pete. Which of these two guys do you like more this week?
Well, I think that Packers game a little bit sketchy. Packers coming off a bad loss. I think they'll be ready to go. And do the Eagles come out, off of a bye, and do they start off a little bit slow and sluggish there? Zay Flowers is the play for me here. Zay Flowers at 8 against Minnesota. That secondary has been super up and down. I'm gonna roll with Zay Flowers probably pretty comfortably here. I like Devonta Smith, but I'm going with Zay.
Yeah, I like Devonta Smith this week, but Zay Flowers is actually taking a significant step forward, and I don't think a lot of people realize that. With Lamar as his quarterback this year, his target share has been well over 30%, and he has had wide receiver one usage this year. He's a guy that I find buying low, and I know the buy low period has kind of passed with him now that Lamar is fully healthy, but he's been really good this year. And Minnesota, I know their numbers look good on paper, but this team struggled a lot against, different offenses at times this year, whether that's been, a few weeks ago, like DK Metcalf had a massive game, even though the matchup looked horrible, right? That they have a defense that is very susceptible. And obviously, every time you face the Ravens, you're going to have to focus on Derrick Henry and Lamar in the ground game. Zay Flowers is going to get the matchups that are going to be very favorable for him, and the target share is there to match it. He's a really good player, and you got to find a way to get him in your lineup. All right, another question from him right here. Trade Bijan for Josh Jacobs and Drake London. That is a blockbuster trade right there.
Yeah. This is one that I would want to look at the schedules first, before giving an answer. So, if you want to give your thoughts initially, go ahead. But I just want to take a look and just see what the schedules look for both here.
Yeah, honestly, I think I'll take the Jacobs and Drake London side of it. I mean, Bijan's a dog. I want to say he's my second overall player rest of the season. Maybe first. He might be number one now after Jonathan Taylor's last week. But if you're getting Josh Jacobs, who's right outside of my top 12, Drake London, who's right inside my top 16, you're getting two elite pieces there that are going to be viable the rest of the season. With Jacobs, you're getting that goal line work among the best in the NFL. He ranks top 3 in red zone touches. And then Drake London, you saw what he could do last week. And with Michael Penix Jr. at a quarterback position, they've been averaging over a 28% target share as a duo. So getting both those guys for Bijan, that's the point where you consider, hey, maybe I do move off my stud. Getting those two guys makes my team significantly more deep and allows me to fill two positions, still having an RB1 and a wide receiver one.
Down the stretch, they like to run the football later on in the year. They're going to lean on Jacobs a lot. I know there's been talk about Emmanuel Wilson. Is he factoring in at all? I'm not overly concerned about that. When you look at Jacobs' schedule, he gets Philly and the Giants the next 2 weeks. Those are both favorable schedules for running backs. The playoff schedule is good. Unfortunately, first week of the playoffs, they get Denver, who's number 5 against points allowed to running backs right now.
Yeah.
But before that, they get Chicago coming in 25th in points allowed. They get Chicago, Denver, then Chicago, then Baltimore. So, I mean, two plus matchups for the semis and the finals. And then, like you had mentioned, I mean, I think you're getting 2 top 12 players for the cost of a top 5 player. And to me, depending on what your team looks like, I'm okay. I think that's well worth it. I think it makes a lot of sense.
100%. Let's get to the next question here. Do I flex Dalton Schultz versus the Jags instead of Slayton with bad weather? My kicker is Santos. Should I look for somebody else? I'll start with this one here. 100%. I think you go Dalton Schultz in the flex over Slayton due to that weather situation. But Dalton Schultz is a must start in my tight end room this week. He has an incredibly favorable matchup against the Jacksonville Jaguars this weekend. He was Davis Mills' favorite target last week against the Denver Broncos. He finished with 77 receiving yards, despite that being a brutal matchup. And Dalton Schultz, well, I thought he was in the grave. I thought he was beyond cooked last year for his performances, right? No fantasy viability. He 8+ points now in 6 of the last 8 weeks. He's been more consistent this year. And I think this is the week you got to start him. Davis Mills is going to find a way to get him the ball. And obviously the attention will be towards Nico Collins this week. I actually think the Texans pull out the upset over the Jaguars this week due to their defense. And then the kicker situation. I think with Cairo, you have to understand the fact that, despite the weather, I think he has a favorable matchup. The Bears have had 64 points from kickers over the last 5 weeks. Nobody kicks more field goals than the Bears right now. And I think the weather might even contribute more to that with this team solely focusing on the ground and maybe stalling out on third down on their side of the field. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, kicker, I'll default to you. I don't have a ton to say. I mean, if it's the weather's super brutal, I mean, obviously take your chances there. But as for the tight end and Slayton, I I
Tough.
I would I think I'd go with I think I would go with Slayton over Schultz only because it's a half point PPR. If it was a full point, I would feel maybe more comfortable with Schultz because I expect him to get more volume than Slayton. I think Slayton's going to make the bigger plays though. Obviously the weather is the biggest concern though. So if you want the safer play, I think it's Schultz. If you want more of a ceiling play and more risky play because I don't think the floor is very high, you go with Slayton. But yeah, it's a good note on Schultz, and I'm kind of with you. I could absolutely see the Jaguars losing that game. I don't think the Jaguars. My hot take is I think the Jaguars missed the playoffs.
I don't think
fall
that's a
off.
hot take. I think that's probably a realistic possibility that they do miss the play. That
Yeah,
they're just not a good football team. I mean, you saw it last week against Las Vegas in the game they had there. It felt like early on in the season they were finding crazy ways to win games and they weren't super talented. Their best player on defense, Devin Lloyd, has been hurt.
yeah,
And I don't know. I don't think it's that crazy of a take. I 100% think the Colts
well,
are winning the South, and then that
yeah.
puts them in the wild card where they're probably competing against two AFC West teams, right?
Sure.
Baltimore is going to be in that mix probably, right? Or Pittsburgh. So they're going to have to, compete with those teams, and I don't think they're better than any of those teams. I know they beat the Chiefs. That was their
Yeah.
big signature win, but it was also a game where it felt like the Chiefs handed them that game after halftime. So
Yeah.
I'm about it. I'm about the Jaguars missing the playoffs.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. I think I mean and the Jags, their defense really was I mean, I think they had 3 straight games with like 3 turnovers or 3 interceptions or
Yeah.
something like that. The first 3 weeks, like I mean, they that just wasn't sustainable, and their defense just really is not that good. I was super surprised in the beginning of the year, but they've fallen off. Their secondary has been really bad the last couple of weeks from an EPA standpoint. So yeah, I think it's tough sledding for them, and honestly, I'm still not counting out the Bengals. I know the Bengals have had some tough losses here, but I still think they could possibly stay afloat here. Yeah,
I
and
mean,
make
if their
March.
defense is not the worst thing since a Pee Wee football team, they have a chance. They have a chance.
Yeah, yeah, I know,
All
brutal.
right, all right. Let's get into it here. Another question here: as an RJ Harvey owner, should I be excited about a rest of the season outlook considering Dobbins' injury? Dobbins did return, right? But you also have to take into the fact that over time these guys seem to get rolled up and miss. DeAndre Swift finished the game 2 weeks ago, missed the next week. I think if you're looking at RJ Harvey as more exciting next week against Kansas City in a 1 week rental, probably not the best outlook,
Yeah,
but I mean, if Dobbins, this is what RJ Harvey owners have been waiting for. If Dobbins misses any time, RJ Harvey is finally going to have that workload that makes you feel comfortable, or Sean Payton will just roll out Tyler Batty or
Tyler
something
Burnett.
like that for like 40% of snaps and just makes
Yeah.
no sense.
I mean, Jaleel probably gets called up at that point.
Yeah.
And they roll with the 3 of them. And I think Bidet continues to be like that pass catching back, but he's not even good at catching the football. He's really good in space. But yeah, I think the one thing that's concerning about Dobbins is that he's going for a second opinion. And it sounds like it's a mid-foot issue, which I was reading. It sounds kind of similar to what happened to Bucky Irving, where Bucky was
Oh boy.
played the rest of the game, and then we saw him now miss time. Now it's kind of a mix of a shoulder and a foot for Bucky. But the fact that Dobbins is getting a second opinion makes me think that he's definitely slated to miss a couple of weeks. I could be wrong. The bye is coming at the perfect time for Denver. After this, they got a mini bye plus the bye, so they only play one game, I think, in the next like 28 days. But either way, I think we're probably looking at missed time for JK.
I mean, it's interesting. Like their adrenaline is a crazy thing. These guys finish games with injuries and then they're going to miss time.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's crazy how that works. All right. Next question here from our GOAT. Colston Loveland or Rondé Gadsden. I'm going to Rondé Gadsden in this one. I think that for a tight end, in an offense with 3 pass catchers who command a significant amount of volume, he's looked really good. And Pittsburgh has really struggled against tight ends. Think about Tucker Kraft a few weeks ago on Sunday Night Football. He's going to be a big part of this game plan. And I know his ADOT's a little bit higher for the tight end position, but this is a defense that is going to be able to pass rush Justin Herbert with their injuries at the tackle position. I think you look at the Chargers receivers that benefit most from Justin Herbert having to get the ball out quicker. It's Ladd McConkey and Rondé Gadsden. Those are the 2 guys I look at. I think Keenan Allen and QJ are going to be the most that suffer from these injuries on the offensive line. And Pittsburgh last week surprised everybody with their upset of the Colts, despite their struggles on defense throughout this year. And Pittsburgh is an opportunistic defense. They're able to get to the quarterback and they're able to take the ball away, right? But when they're not doing that, it's matchup heaven in fantasy football. So Rondé Gadsden, definitely the play for me in my mind.
Yeah, I'm not going to overthink it either. I mean, you're chasing upside for Loveland, but Gadsden's already giving you that on a week by week, and he's giving it to you like 4 straight weeks. I mean, he didn't get to the end zone last week, but still, I mean, you're talking about his floor has been like 50, 60 yards 4 weeks in a row. I would go with Gadsden. I wouldn't overthink it with Loveland.
Yeah, definitely 100%. All right, let's get to our next guy here. 12-man full PPR. Who would you start with a normal format? Darter, Mahomes, good thing. Mahomes is a bye week. Running back, CMC, Jones, Walker, Benson, Pacheco, B-Rob, wide receiver, Olave, Diggs, Pierce, Terry, Ayuk, and Jennings. Then tight end, Njoku, Waller, Bates, and Rams. All right, I'll do running backs and tight end. All right, we got our quarterback locked in. As far as the running backs that I'm taking a look at in here, it's interesting. You obviously got a lot of bye weeks mixed in there. I'm leaning with Walker and Jones in that situation. I think those are your two best bets. I think Aaron Jones has not been bad since returning, and he's actually played more than I thought he would. Last week, he was very efficient, 8 carries, 79 yards, so not too shabby there. And then at tight end, you obviously got to go Njoku with Waller injured right now. What are your thoughts at wide receiver, Pete?
Yeah, I mean, you got to pick two here. You go Olave, for sure. You're going with Olave, and then really for me, Terry's out, right? Terry's out. I think
Terry
he's
is
out.
out. Terry is out.
Okay, Ayuk's obviously out. Terry's out. So it's really between Jennings, Diggs, Pierce, Olave. I'm going with Olave for sure, just for the high floor. And then really for me, I would I keep talking about I just keep staying away from Patriots players. I would go with Jawan Jennings against the Rams. You know, I know that might be a little spicy because Diggs has been solid, but I'll go with Jennings. I think no Ricky Pearsall. They're still hurting there. I think that game ends up being very high scoring. And ultimately, I would go with Jennings and Olave there for sure.
All right, now. All right, next one. We already answered this one. T Mac versus Vidal with Ted McMillan healthy. You trust him in your starting lineup. I know the production has been incredibly inconsistent, right? Because Bryce Young is just not that great of a quarterback. But Ted McMillan, the usage is elite, right? This is a player that we'll look at during draft season next year and be like, man, Ted McMillan's outlook heading into year 2 is incredibly great. If Bryce Young just takes a step forward or something, this guy's going to be among the best 12 wide receivers in fantasy. I don't even got to think we talk about it. It's Ted. It's Ted.
Yeah.
All right, our boy here, Deontay Thornton, with his crazy question of the week. Do I take Shadur Sanders, Tank Bigsby, and Juju Smith-Schuster for Jamar Chase, Josh Allen, and Rico Dowdle? I think what does it for me is, Shadur Sanders, right? You never want to trade away Shadur. You never know when the perfect timing is coming up, and he's going to get those reps. So make sure you hold off there. All right, Rashid Shaheed over Walker, a stretch tomorrow, full PPR. Pete, what are your thoughts?
I would go with Kenneth Walker, just more consistent. I need to see it with Shaheed before I feel comfortable. Right now, it's the JSN show, so I'm going with Walker.
Yeah, I think tomorrow, just go Walker. I have no clue how much Rashid Shaheed's going to play in his first week in Seattle. I know he played for Clint Kubiak last year in New Orleans, and I'm excited about that outlook the rest of the year, but trust the guy that's at least going to have some guaranteed volume in this matchup. And it's against the Cardinals where they have a solid spread. They've already beat this year. I think the running game gets enough volume for the Seattle Seahawks this week. So go with Kenneth Walker. Next question here, Pete, Dalton Kincaid or Parker Washington PPR?
I would go with Kincaid. I like Parker Washington. Houston's defense does concern me a little bit. The nice thing is Washington and Lawrence seem to have a really good connection even before this injury. Like for whatever reason, Parker Washington seems to be like a safety blanket for Trevor Lawrence, and they seem to connect. But I'm gonna go with Kincaid against Miami. The defense is still really bad. It's in Miami, so the weather is going to be good. I think there's a chance to be decent scoring. And I'll go with Kincaid. He's been consistent. While Parker Washington feels like a guy that there's a lot of helium around him right now, and I'm definitely somebody who's going to be starting him in some tougher leagues. But I could also see him flopping. I would go with Kincaid. I don't see any risk in the Kincaid matchup against Miami at all.
Yeah, I like Dalton Kincaid a ton this week. He's one of the more interesting players in fantasy to where he plays under like 40% of snaps. And when he's on the field, he's getting thrown the ball a ton and he's been cashing in, scoring touchdowns. He's having big performances. Last week, the Chiefs were a tough matchup on paper, and Kincaid absolutely shredded them. Kincaid's really good. He's probably the most trusted pass catcher for me in the Bills. I know Khalil Shakir has been better as of late, but
Sure.
Dalton Kincaid's the guy that has that upside. You play him this week against a bad Dolphins defense, especially against tight ends. They've struggled. All right, the Frogs are back here. J.J. McCarthy, Marcus Mariota, or Aaron Rodgers, and then Ted McMillan or Jamison Williams. Who you going with?
I would. Oh man, Mariota is interesting because the game script, but I don't want any parts of that offense right now. It looks absolutely broken, and with no Terry, he's definitely not. It's not viable.
Yeah.
Rodgers and JJ are close for me. I have JJ at 18. I have Rodgers. Where do I have Rodgers? I have Rodgers at 20 against the Chargers. I would go with JJ. There's a little bit of concern that Baltimore defense has been playing really well, and the Chargers defense is kind of up and down, inconsistent. But I would go with JJ for ceiling. I'd go with Rodgers for floor. And then between Tet and JMO, I'm still going to go with Tet. I know we talked about JMO before, but I trust Tet more than I trust JMO. I don't want to have to put JMO in my lineup if I can avoid to. But I do think he's lined up for a good game. But we've said that a lot this year.
Yeah, I think with JMO, he's more of that high-end wide receiver 3 play this week just based on how inconsistent he's been, but I love him this week. I think he has a good game, but compared to Tet McMillan, not really a decision for me. I'm going with Tet. You got to go with the guy that has elite usage on a weekly basis, right? And at least has a little bit of floor to go along with him. As far as the quarterbacks go, I have all these guys very clumped together this week. I actually have JJ McCarthy as my highest one. I think against Baltimore, this Minnesota Vikings offense is going to have to score the ball and produce some points in order to stay in this matchup. JJ McCarthy's yet to top 25 passing attempts in a game. This is going to be the first time that he does it against Baltimore. And if there is a place where you can attack Baltimore, it's going to be JJ McCarthy's legs. I want to see what he can do there a little bit more often. And Justin Jefferson is a significant matchup that they should be targeting. And last week they were able to exploit it against the Detroit Lions, who were a bit healthier than they had been in prior weeks after their bye week. So I'll take the hot hand, right? Give me JJ McCarthy this week. Juan Pena, who for my wide receiver 2-3 and flex spot, he's got Deebo Samuel, Quentin Johnston, Tez Johnson, Jacoby Myers, Demario Douglas, Parker Washington. Then at running back, he's got Travion Henderson, Amari Demercado, or Zach Charbonnet. Who are you going out of this grouping?
I go with Deebo just because I'll buy into the garbage time against the Lions. So I'll take Deebo there. So his wide receiver 2 and 3. Okay, so he can do 2 wide receivers. He can technically do 3. Am I reading this? Okay, so he's starting Adams, he's starting Taylor, he's starting Jacobs. Yeah. He could start. Is that a separate question between the running backs or
no? I think he can go 2 wide receivers and then he gets a flex spot. So if you're playing a running back, they go in the flex.
Got it. All right. Yeah, I would go with Deebo. I would go with Quentin Johnston. And I would go with Henderson just for the volume alone. Henderson out of the 3, I trust that he's going to get the highest workload. And then Deebo, I mentioned, and then Quentin Johnston. He's been up and down lately the last couple weeks, but I'll go with him to maybe bounce back. Tez is interesting. I don't trust Jacoby just yet to play him. I'm not playing Pop Douglas. I'm not playing Parker Washington over those guys.
Yeah, I'm going with a similar lineup. Deebo, Quentin Johnston. I think they had the volume for sure. Deebo a little bit more consistent than QJ, but the matchup on paper itself looks solid for QJ in terms of yards allowed from that Pittsburgh secondary. 2 perimeter receivers. Travion Henderson, right? You trust him this week with his snap share without Ramondre Stevenson last week, and you don't look back. I think you got 3 solid players with an advantage over those other options, and you ride with those guys. Trade question here from Damo. Hey, half PPR, 2 flex league. I was offered Jamar Chase, Romo Dunze, Kyron Williams for JT CMC. My choice on who? So one of those 2, and then Chris Olave. Who are you going with in this trade. So he's basically getting Jamar, Rome, and Kyron for either JT or CMC and then Olave.
Uh, man, I look at Jamar and JT CMC as kind of a wash. So then it becomes Rome Kyron for Olave. I would stick with the Jamar, Rome, and Kyron side. I know Kyron hasn't been that great. Jamar's been phenomenal. Depending, doesn't matter who the quarterback's going to be. So I look at him as a wash between the running backs. To be honest, maybe a slight downgrade to JT and CMC, but it's not far. And you make up for that with Roman Kyron, who are to me clear upgrades over Olave right now, who's in a dead offense. So I would go with Jamar and the Rome side.
Yeah, listen, I think the Jamar, Rome, and Kyron side, based on your wide receiver situation, right, and struggling with that grouping right now, it completely revitalizes your group, and you still get to keep one of JT or CMC. Personally, I think JT, right, is a name that I honestly would trade him, right? I would see if you could do that, hold CMC. CMC is going to have that PPR value. I like
Yeah.
his rest of the season schedule. I know JT's been great, right? But the Colts have some more hard games on their schedule the rest of the year, and it's just going to come down to which one you prefer overall because they're both very close, and it might just be personal preference. But Jamar, Rome, and Kyron, right? That's a haul. That's going to completely revitalize your wide receiver room, and you get a solid running back in Kyron Williams. So that's a great trade, and it completely revitalizes your team. Big Poppy here, Dalton Schultz or Tyler Warren. Pete, I might have an unpopular answer here. I honestly think Dalton Schultz might have a bigger game than Tyler Warren this week.
Oh boy.
The Falcons are so good at eliminating tight ends. They get George Kittle returned, and they gave him a zero bomb from George Kittle against it. They've been so good at blanketing tight ends. I am frightened by the Atlanta Falcons defense against tight ends in fantasy.
I get it. I have Warren at 5. I don't get me wrong. I can understand the argument of going with Dalton Schultz or liking him this week. I still wouldn't do it though. I know the matchup's really good, but to me, I can't sit Tyler Warren. There's just not a. I don't care about the matchup. I don't. It just doesn't matter to me. I know last week wasn't the best game for him, but he's been consistent on a week in week out basis. I don't. I don't care unless you're telling me, that it's Trey McBride right now. That's really the only tight end that I'm like saying, okay, I could start him. I mean, I have Warren at 5. Don't get me wrong. I actually have him at 4. But what I'm saying is that on a week in, week out basis, the rest of the season, Tyler Warren's number 2 for me behind Trey McBride, and I have Bowers at 3. I don't know many situations. I'm not going to get cute with my lineup and start a speculative play with Dalton Schultz.
Yeah, I can 100% get behind it. I think you got to trust your studs 100% in that boat. I'm more of a beware guy with Tyler Warren this week. The caution is being stated. I am worried about Tyler Warren, and if I'm throwing bets on players this week, I'm definitely taking Tyler Warren unders for this week. Fantasy football, I might just have to trust him depending on my leagues and the guys I might look at for streamers this week behind him. But Tyler Warren, just buyer beware this week. The Atlanta Falcons have been blanketing tight ends. All right. I have Nico Collins and Emeka. Oh, wait, this is already one of the other questions. All right. Would you trade Omarion Hampton for Wan'Dale Robinson and Aaron Jones? My running backs are Travis Etienne, Omarion Hampton, Chase Brown, Kyle Monungai, Swift Benson, and Neal. That's a deep RB room. And then wide receivers are Higgins, Pittman, Egabuka, and Parker Washington. What are your thoughts?
Nah, I mean, look, Hampton's probably not going to be back for a couple more weeks. But I mean, your running backs are good enough to keep you at bay while waiting. Wan'Dale Robinson, I liked Wan'Dale. I drafted him in a lot of best ball leagues before the year started. Him and Demario Douglas were top targets for me. I get it. There's no Malik Neighbors there, but it's to me, it's a significant downgrade from Hampton when he's healthy to Wan'Dale and Aaron Jones. Unless you're factoring in that maybe Hampton's not going to be fully healthy even when he comes back rest of the season. But I think they're going to keep him out long enough to where he should be fully healthy. And if he's not, then something's wrong. So you can get by with Monungai this week, Chase Brown. Like you have enough guys to get by right now while you wait for Hampton to come back.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think he has the depth to be able to hold on to Omarion Hampton the rest of the season and wait that out. For Wan'Dale Robinson and Aaron Jones, it feels like you're kind of getting a cheap offer in that regard, right? Your running back room has a lot of solid pieces, but it needs that RB1 potential. And the only guy that I look at out of that grouping that has that, unless DeAndre Swift goes down, is Amarian Hampton. And I know Chase Brown is starting to revitalize his name with Joe Flacco at quarterback, but he's still a high end RB2 for me, despite his really favorable schedule upcoming for him. I mean, it's definitely a situation where if you feel like you need to sell Amarian Hampton, you better sell high just based on your RB room and hoping that, you could find a guy, that has that upside. Deontay Thornton with another question here. Dylan Gabriel or Tom Brady rest of the season? Tough question. I think, honestly, the ghost of Tom Brady, right, comes on the sideline for the Raiders. I think they could win more games than what I'm seeing from Geno Smith this year. I mean, yesterday or Thursday, my gosh, that offensive performance from the Raiders was something. And this is the thing that we've been talking about on the podcast, though, too, is like, how is Chip Kelly the highest paid offensive coordinator in the NFL? Blows my mind. When has he ever had success in the NFL that the Raiders were like, hey, Chip Kelly, he's gonna be great for us. So
Pete Carroll's made a lot of mistakes. I mean, even the offensive line being coached by his son, Jackson Powers Johnson, the best offensive lineman, was not even starting at one point early on in the season. I don't really understand. I think Pete's making some mistakes.
It's always felt like this like Raiders team heading into the year, right? They were trying to put a band-aid on a gunshot wound,
Yeah.
right? By adding a few of these veterans and being like, oh, we're gonna compete in an AFC West with 3 playoff teams last year because we added a few veterans and a potential Hall of Fame coach. That's just not how it works. I mean, they're suffering right now. And they honestly set their rebuild back a few years with what they've done with this roster. And now you have Max Crosby, one of the best edge defenders in the NFL, who's just under a massive contract and kind of just stuck there right now. At least the Browns with Myles Garrett, they have a plan. They drafted really well this year, and they might be a quarterback away from being there. Hard Seal Team 6 is on the entire Raiders except Deontay Thornton. Oh man, Deontay Thornton got his chance and then he dropped that ball. It was very disappointing for the Deontay Thornton hype club. So close. It was so close. All right, back to real questions here. Rachaad White or Kyren Williams this week, Pete?
I think it's closer than people might want to make it out to be. I think I'd still go with Kyren Williams, but I have these pretty close. I have Rachaad White as like borderline top 15. I have him at 16 right now. I have Kyren at 10. Kyren didn't have the most success last time. Obviously, he had the fumble. Maybe it's a revenge game for him to kind of bounce back. And obviously, Rams kind of looked a little silly the last game. So maybe they have more of a game plan. And so I'll go with Kyren, but I really do like Rachaad White a lot this week.
Yeah, you got to lean Kyren in this matchup. And the thing I'm interested with Rachaad White, though, is before the bye week that Sean Tucker played his highest season percent of snap share. I know White has had that volume, but his efficiency marks in the ground have really been struggling. 1.3% missed tackle rate is a little concerning. I wonder if he's the guy this week that is the odd man out and receives less touches. I don't know for sure what's going to happen, but his silver lining this week is his receiving value. I think through the air is where Rachaad White makes his money in PPR leagues, but you can't trust him over Kyren Williams this week, who's been very good this year. AJ Pierce here. Oh, wait, read his last one. White is by himself, but the last time Kyren played the 49ers, he dropped 38. Yeah, I think. Listen,
did he?
Yeah, he had,
Thursday night game. Did he drop that much?
I thought he had a nice day. I'm looking.
I know he had the fumble. I know he had the fumble.
He did have the fumbling. That was the fumble game from Kyren.
Oh, you know what? He did have but he did have. I think he had a decent amount in the past.
14 carries, 65 yards, 8 catches, 66 yards, and 2 touchdowns.
Yeah. That was it. Well, he didn't get it done on the ground as much, but he looked really good in the air. That's right. It's a good call.
Yeah, he definitely. Yeah, Kyren's like an interesting player just because he's not super flashy ever. He's never super efficient, but he just always has the volume, and he plays with Matthew Stafford, Puka Nacua, and Devontae Adams. So it's almost like he can be an afterthought at times, but he goes through and gets that. All right, here we go. Back to AJ here. I need more upside. Hold your nose. Need one flex. K. Dotton, Demario Douglas, Rashad Bateman, and Olamide Zaccheaus. Any other waiver upside? Kendrick Bourne. I know it stinks. I don't think it's that bad. I think he does have some options here. Who are you going with?
I mean, if you're talking about upside and you're willing to take the floor, I'd go with Rashad Bateman against Minnesota, who, I mean, look what Devonta Smith and AJ Brown had 2 touchdowns. They broke out in that game. Devonta Smith had a monster game of over 100 yards in that one, too. I think that's probably your route if you want upside. If you're kind of looking for maybe not as much risk, then I would go with Cade Otton still. I know Pop Douglas feels like he could be the way. But I just think that they're going to struggle against that secondary still. I keep saying it, but I think Otton's the play if you really aren't going for as much upside as you're leading on here. But I think Bateman would be the guy I would go with.
Yeah, and listen, I'm gonna go an interesting route. If the weather changes a little bit here in Chicago, Zacchaeus is not a bad play. The Giants have really struggled against slot receivers this year. I think he has that upside potentially this week. But if the weather is going to stay the same, which it likely will, you got to avoid him. I think Cade Otton this week still has that more 1 week viability. He did this last year where he had a nice mid-season surge and then he kind of disappeared towards the end of the year. Probably something similar brewing. Squeeze all the juice you can out of Cade Otton. Get those final good performances while you can. I think he is a solid plug and play in your flex this week. Final answer for this, Tyler, was Kyron over Rashad Wright. Real quick, though, we got 10 minutes left in the show, guys. Make sure you're dropping all of the final start and sit questions down in the comment section below while me and Pete are here to answer your questions and help you win in week 10. Interesting one here. Don't want to develop Deontay Thornton because Tyler Lockett and Trey Tucker are playing over a Megatron build. Definitely interesting for sure what they're doing in their development part of it. They have Jack Beckett in there as well, who's not even playing in the slot after they traded their slot receiver. So, Pete Carroll, time to answer some questions, buddy.
Yeah,
all right, what's up, boys? Pick up a running back, DeAndre Swift, Travion Henderson, or Travis Etienne. Who are you going with out of this group this week?
I'm gonna go with Travis Etienne against Houston. I know it's a little sketchy against them. The defense is good, but I trust him in his matchup more than I trust Henderson. I know it sounds crazy, but I prefer him. I'm not really that high on Swift. I think all signs lead to a hot hand. And I think Mononga is that hot hand. So I think he's going to be the hammer in this weather. So I think it's really between Henderson and Etienne. And I have them back to back in my rankings. I have them at 21 and 22. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you it's a slam dunk to go Etienne. I don't think it is. But I'm going with Etienne over Henderson.
I am going to lean Travion Henderson out of this grouping. I do think the hot hand take in Chicago is going to happen. Kyle Mononga is going to play more snaps than DeAndre Swift this week, right? He's been in and out of practice. He's had some injuries, and it might not even be a hot hand situation. It might just be that the team is easing him back. But one thing I know for sure about this Bears running game is that Ben Johnson does not love DeAndre Swift as a runner. When he had him in Detroit, he held him to under 100 carries, right, with Jamal Williams in that backfield. He was forced to give DeAndre Swift carries this year because the team, Kyle Mononga, was not ready to take on a role, right? Roshan Johnson was hurt, and they weren't able to get Ashton Jeanty in the draft, who I think they originally were hoping would fall to them. So it was, hey, we have DeAndre Swift. We're going to have to use him to start the year. I think Kyle Mononga, rest of the season, is going to be a dog. But this week, Travion Henderson, a player that I think is going to play a significant amount, going to be able to have a nice day against Tampa Bay. And I do think he has a good receiving outlook this week in that matchup. As far as the RJ Harvey question, we did address this earlier. We both think that J.K. Dobbins could potentially miss some time, but Denver has one game in 28 days, I think is what it is. So by the time Dobbins might be healthy, Harvey may only get one start as a true bell cow. If you want to look at that whole video, just go back into the live stream when this is done. Not sure what minute mark we did, but we definitely addressed it, and you can go check that out if you're interested. All right. I have Drake London, Michael Pittman, and Jalen Waddle. He wants a wide receiver for Puka. Trying to process this in my brain. It's not really processing well right now. Running back, not a receiver.
I don't know how to answer this.
Yeah, I'm still processing. If you're still in here, Crunch, let us know what you're doing.
What the question is.
Yeah, and then we'll get back to you. Need a flex as well. Devonta Smith, DeAndre Swift, Travion Henderson, or Travis Etienne. My head's still in a blender. Go ahead and answer this one.
Yeah, I would go with Devonta Smith. I have him as my wide receiver, I think 12 this week over AJ. I know we talked about Devonta or Zay Flowers, and I did pick Zay, but that's just because I'm that high on Zay. I love Devonta this week. I think he's gonna have a really, really nice game.
Yeah, I think Devonta is the play out of this group. The interesting part about the Eagles is that their offense has been a little bit better, right? But it's been on these big plays. They've had like 2 or 3 big plays, and then you look at the box score and be like, "Oh, the Eagles' offense looks a lot better." It still feels like they're stalling out and their passing game's a little bit inconsistent. I'm interested to see how they look at the bye, but this Green Bay defense is a little bit overrated. And does having the opponent having Hurts change your answer? No. I'm a big component on, you can't worry about what the other guy has, and you just have to play your best players. And right, if Jalen Hurts has a great day and Devonta Smith has a great day, you're not being hurt by that. You're still having a receiver have a really solid day compared to a quarterback, and hopefully your quarterback has a nice day as well. All right, Pete, we're getting close to the end of the show here. Are there any players, right, that you are looking at as a sneaky play this week that nobody's really talking about?
Ooh, um, oh man, you put me on the spot here. I wasn't ready for that one.
I
Um,
can go real quick if you
yeah,
want to think about it.
why don't you go first and let me think about it here.
Yeah, I think as far as a guy that I'm looking at as a sneaky sleeper, Juwan Johnson for the New Orleans Saints, right? Since Tyler Shuck took over as the starting quarterback, he's only averaging 4.8 yards per attempt. It's brutal. That's really bad. Like this guy is checking the ball down underneath. Juwan Johnson, since he took over, is hovering right around that 20% target share mark, 3 straight tight end one performances. Now he gets the Panthers where Chris Olave has not had over 60 receiving yards in 5 straight games against them. I honestly think Juwan Johnson is in that streamer tight end play. I got him right inside my top 12. And if you're desperate at tight end with these bye weeks, not a bad idea to go get him in your starting lineup.
Yeah, I like that. I honestly, Taysom Hill seems a little interesting too. I think for me, I would go with Chris Rodriguez. I know that
Mm.
sounds kind of unpopular because, look, game script wise, Detroit, you figure they're going to be up, and what does Chris Rodriguez's role look like as a receiving back? But I mean, report he was named the captain this week. And so I don't know the way things have gone with Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt, and I know people have liked that. I think C-Rod could be like an emergency plug-in if you're really hurting at the running back position. I think he's a good play, and I think low key, I think Nick Chubb could be a nice play too against Jacksonville. Like I said, their defense has not been nearly as good as they were to start the year, and overall, I think Houston ends up winning that game. So. I think those two guys are kind of hold your nose guys that you can plug in, especially if you're hurting at the running back position.
I like that. There's definitely a lot of teams that are desperate to add another running back potentially and could be a big time ad for them as a last minute addition. Well, Pete, I really appreciate you coming on the show and answering everybody's questions tonight. If you guys do have any more questions, make sure you check out mine or Pete's Twitters. We're more than willing to answer those questions up until kickoff. Tomorrow, it's an early one. We got Colts and Falcons overseas. I'm sick of these overseas games. There are too many this year, too many overseas games, but we'll be up. We'll be watching that game. Make sure you guys drop any questions you have, and me and Pete will catch you guys next time.